What if I told you there's a 2,500-year-old framework for understanding your own mind that has absolutely nothing to do with religion or blind faith? Well, in this explainer, we're going to look at exactly that. A direct, super practical method for tackling that age-old question of why we're so often, well, dissatisfied.
You know that feeling, right? Like you're on a hamster wheel, constantly chasing after something that you think will finally make you happy. You get the thing, and for a minute, it's great. But then the feeling fades, and you're right back where you started, looking for the next thing. It's a totally universal human experience.
So get this, about 2,500 years ago, a man named Siddhartha Gautama said he found a way to just step off that wheel, for good. And he wasn't a god or some divine being. He was a regular person who looked at the hard facts of life, aging, sickness, death, and he became obsessed with finding a real, lasting way out. Later, he became known as the Buddha, which just means the one who is awake.
Now here's the cool part. He approached this whole problem like a doctor. He didn't ask anyone to just believe him. Instead, he laid out this incredibly clear four-part analysis of our situation, and it all starts with a powerful diagnosis of what's really going on inside our heads.
Okay, so let's dive right into it, starting with that diagnosis. This is what's known as the first noble truth, and it basically identifies the fundamental problem we're all dealing with.
The diagnosis can be summed up in one word, dukkha. Now, this usually gets translated as suffering, but honestly, that word doesn't even come close. It's more like a deep background hum of unsatisfactoriness. It's that subtle stress that comes from the fact that everything, and I mean everything in our lives, the good stuff and the bad stuff, is unstable and always changing.
To make it super clear, dukkha is usually broken down into three layers. First, you've got the obvious stuff: physical pain, getting sick, losing someone you care about. We all know that one. The second is a little more sneaky. It's the suffering that comes from change. That amazing vacation has to end. That perfect meal is over in like 10 minutes. Even happiness itself has this little thread of anxiety woven into it, because we know it's not going to last forever. And then there's the deepest layer, this pervasive background stress of just existing as a self that's made up of constantly shifting parts with no solid ground underneath.
So, if that's the diagnosis, what's the cause, right? A good doctor doesn't just tell you you're sick, they figure out what's making you sick. And that brings us to the second noble truth.
The cause is identified as tanha. You can translate that as thirst or craving. It's that relentless little engine inside all of us that's always pushing us to get what we want, to hold on to what we have, and to get rid of what we don't like. It's this constant grasping for pleasure and security in a world that, as we just saw, is fundamentally shaky and unstable.
I love this metaphor for it. Craving is the house builder. Every time we act on that craving, every time we grasp, it's like we're laying another brick, building the walls of our own personal prison of dissatisfaction, brick by brick. It's the very fuel that keeps that hamster wheel spinning. And this craving isn't just one thing, it's tricky. It shows up in three main disguises. You've got the obvious one, sensual craving, for delicious food, great music, all the pleasant stuff. But then there's a deeper one, the craving to exist, to be somebody, to become more, to leave our mark. And just as strong on the flip side is the craving for it all to just stop, the desire to escape, to not exist. They seem like opposites, but they're all just different flavors of that same restless thirst.
Okay, so we've got a diagnosis and a cause. And I know, it might be sounding a little grim so far, but this is where the whole framework flips and becomes incredibly hopeful. A good doctor also gives you a prognosis. They tell you if a cure is possible. And that's the third noble truth.
The Buddha lays out a really clear contrast. On one side, there's samsara, that endless, repetitive cycle of suffering we're all on, fueled by craving. But on the other side, there's nibbana, the complete and total end of that cycle. And it's not some heaven you go to after you die. It's a state of profound freedom and rock-solid peace that you can experience right here, right now, by simply cutting off the fuel source, that craving.
The word nibbana itself is such a brilliant metaphor. It literally means to extinguish or to blow out. Think of greed, hatred, and confusion like fires constantly burning inside your mind. The goal isn't to wrestle them to the ground or suppress them. It's just to stop feeding them fuel. You take away the fuel, the craving, and the fire just goes out, all by itself. And what's left isn't emptiness, but this incredible clarity and peace.
So this is the million-dollar question, right? How do we actually do that? How do we stop feeding the fire? This brings us to the prescription, the practical, boots-on-the-ground part of the treatment, the fourth noble truth.
The Buddha called his prescription the middle way. See, before he figured all this out, he tried both extremes. He grew up in a palace with every imaginable pleasure. Then he left and became an ascetic, starving himself and practicing really harsh disciplines. He found that neither of them worked. One just makes you distracted and lazy, and the other just weakens your body and mind. The real path, he discovered, was right down the middle.
And the prescription itself is called the Noble Eightfold Path. Now, don't think of this like a linear checklist where you do number 1, then number 2. It's more like a complete training program for your life, with 8 interconnected parts that you work on all at once. It's broken down into 3 main areas: wisdom, which is about seeing things clearly; moral discipline, which is about how you act in the world; and concentration, which is all about training your mind to be focused and stable.
So, the whole system really boils down to these 4 jobs for us, the patient. First, you have to fully understand the diagnosis, dukkha, in your own direct experience. Second, you have to abandon its cause, that grasping and craving. Third, you have to realize for yourself that a cure, nibbana, is actually possible. And fourth, you have to actually develop the path. You have to do the work.
And this, to me, is the most incredible and empowering part of the whole thing. The Buddha's final message wasn't, "Believe me," it was a call to action. He basically laid out a hypothesis and a method for testing it. The whole framework is an open invitation to become a scientist of your own mind, to investigate these claims for yourself, and see if they actually hold up in your own life.
So the final question is really for you. This ancient diagnosis, cause, prognosis, and prescription has been on the table for over 2,000 years. It's inviting us to stop looking outside for a cure and instead to pick up the tools, look within, and become the doctor of our own mind. So what do you think you might find if you did?